A group of British Muslims caused a stir this week after holding a demonstration outside a screening of a Bollywood film in Birmingham. The Kerala story has been slammed by some Muslim critics for its portrayal of Islamic culture in the eponymous southern Indian state, which in itself has triggered backlash from defenders of freedom of speech and expression. So where should the lines between free speech and Islamophobia be drawn? And are protesters justified? Joining me now is my sidekick, Emma Webb, and my other sidekick, Aaron Mastadi. Aaron, I would say that this is entirely a free speech issue. There is no such thing as Islamophobia. And if there is, this isn't it.
Well, there's a lot of claims there. I mean, if we don't have a show to talk about is there Islamophobia, I don't think this is Islamophobia. I do think the film should be allowed to screen. I don't think that for a moment. Obviously, these people have a right to protest. It's interesting, the article, that this can't go ahead. It's a separate thing to protest and to say it can't go ahead. But the film itself has actually, and I would implore your audience to sort of read a little bit about this.
Yeah.
It is claiming to be based upon true events, but it's not remotely accurate. So, for instance...
So like every other film?
Well, it's saying 32,000 people in Kerala joined ISIS, when actually, in reality, it was about 100 to 200 Indians joined ISIS. And it's been condemned by the Indian Congress Party in India. It had to remove some of its promotional materials because they were so inaccurate.
Right.
And I think the issue is, people go to watch this film, like you've sort of hinted at there, it's a dramatisation, and it's being presented as fact.
So how is this any different to The Crown?
That's a good point. But I suppose if you had something like The Crown, which was potentially stirring sectarian dislike and enmity, then I think it'd be an interesting conversation. I don't think that means you don't screen it. I think you probably broadcast it with a caveat: this is a dramatisation. This is not a real life story.
Okay.
It's like saying,
So contextualise it.
I think so. It's like watching Rambo and thinking, actually, there's one guy, took on the entire Russian army in Afghanistan in the 1980s. It's nonsense, but it's like doing that and saying, well, actually, this is based on a true story.
Right.
Quite dangerous as well, given the broader politics, I think.
Emma, to add some clarity to what I said earlier, I think Islamophobia is a word that's often used to shut down debate, to shut down free speech. And I think this is a prime example of that.
Absolutely. It's a euphemism for blasphemy requirements, isn't it? I mean, we've seen it time and time again. We saw it with Charlie Hebdo. Those cartoons were apparently blasphemous, so some people thought that they were entitled to murder as a result of that. We saw the same thing with The Lady of Heaven, which was another film that was shut down. I believe also the same people who were behind this protest were also leading that protest as well. So we have groups of people at home and also abroad, because we've seen this in many cases, Danish cartoon affairs, Salman Rushdie, obviously that was a problem that never went away because he was recently attacked, even though the fatwa was put on his head many, many years ago. So this is a problem that has not gone away. And Islamophobia has essentially become a term used to prevent criticisms of Muslims, to prevent people from even artistic expression that some people find offensive. And so it's become a kind of shield word when actually what they mean is this cartoon is blasphemous. They say it's offensive, they say it's Islamophobic. What they mean is it's blasphemous. If you say something or misportray something in relation to the Prophet Muhammad or something about the Muslim community that certain people don't like, it's blasphemous, it's Islamophobic.
OK, let's go to the man himself. I'm now joined by the man who led the protest, Shakeel Afsar. Shakeel, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you giving us your time. Could you please tell us why you're protesting the film?
Well, we're protesting the film on the factual basis that it's a film to incite violence against Muslims and Kashmiris. We are protesting because we strongly feel that this film is propaganda. And I'm sure, my dear friends and other people on the panel, that you all will agree with what's taking place today in India, with 300 Christian churches being burnt down by Hindu extremists. I think it just reinforces the fact of why we're crying. We are crying because we feel that this film promotes the lynching of people, the lynching of innocent people. Most recently, there was a 16-year-old boy who just happened to fall in love with a Hindu girl, and he was killed and buried in their front yard because he loved her. We are not against freedom of speech, but when a film is inciting violence against a community, how could we stay silent to that? We would not stay silent to any other incitement of any other community, like I've just mentioned, our Christian brothers who are being persecuted at the hands of the BJP as we speak. This is happening.
So this is a film that you don't like. What outcome are you trying to protest? And you're not really protesting, are you? You're disrupting, is what you're doing. You were in the cinema shouting so people could no longer watch the film. What is your end goal? Do you think people should not be allowed to watch this film because you don't like the stance? And every film, every piece of production has a political stance, has some kind of stance to it. You don't like this stance, so therefore do you think people in the UK should not be able to pay money to go and watch it?
I'm quite perplexed, actually. My stance on the situation is the same stance that GB News had when we had the issue of other girls. I'm actually perplexed how yourself and the panel is willing to agree. Sorry, I have to, with all due respect, say the panel is willing to agree that Hindu adults who join ISIS should be given more privilege, but children from UK, namely Shamima Begum, who were groomed as children, are not given that same privilege. I'm sure it was GB News who spoke up against and ran a ticker against BBC News, who made a podcast. I don't understand the double standard narrative. You're willing to support adult Hindus who want to join ISIS and who are criminals, but you do not want to speak for Shamima Begum, who was groomed as a child.
Stop. I'm happy to give you airtime to answer the questions, but then you need to answer the questions. What you're doing right now is whataboutery. GB News does not have a stance. I personally have a stance. I'm happy to give you that stance if you want it, but I'm here to get your stance. And what I'm asking is, are you saying that no one in the UK, in a capitalist country, should be able to pay to go to see a film that you don't like?
I think what I feel is we should unearth the fact of the double standard that exists. The fact that you would never have an anti-Hindu film, you will never have an anti-Jewish film, but why is it that you're okay to have an anti-Muslim film?
Again, it's whataboutery, but it's also untrue. Because
why is it? Sorry?
It's whataboutery again, but it's also untrue. I'm a big fan of
No, it's not untrue. GB News, with all due respect.
Conversations usually work by going two ways.
With all due respect, Calvin.
You say with all due respect, but then show me no respect. You're talking for a minute.
GB News, sorry, the sound's a bit delayed. So GB News is okay to support adult Hindu women who, in the conscience of their mind, want to join ISIS, but are not willing to support Shamima Begum, who was a child who was groomed.
No.
Come on, guys.
Not at all.
Come on, guys. Is this what Christianity promotes?
My personal stance on Shamima Begum has always been... Right, pause your talking for a minute, please. My personal stance on Shamima Begum has always been that she's our responsibility and should have been tried in the United Kingdom.
I'm talking in regards to GB News, Calvin.
So, look, we have many people on GB News with many different perspectives. I have two people on my panel right now, completely different perspectives. There is no GB News stance. So let's not argue against GB News. I'm here to ask you, Shakeel Afsar, why you're disrupting cinemas, because it seems like you want to impose Sharia law because you're saying this is blasphemous against your religion.
Not.
And you don't like
Calvin,
it. That's what I'm asking.
Absolutely not. Calvin, absolutely not. The way you went today in the morning to a pub to protest against the trans community who's indoctrinating our children, which, by the way, I support, we feel that we are doing the same thing. But the only difference is our people are dying. Because of this movie, our children, young Muslim children, even young Christian children are being persecuted. Our brothers are being burnt. The 300 churches in the last 2 weeks have been burnt. Over 70 people have been killed at the hands of these same Hindu extremists who are pushing this agenda that Muslims are out to, love trap every Hindu girl. It's absolutely absurd, Calvin.
Okay. Well, Shakeel, my protest at the Honor Oak pub I would never stop people going into the pub. I would never stop people purchasing drinks. I would never stop them from going to pay to see these drugs.
I agreed with the fact that your democratic right to protest.
My question to you is why you're disrupting and preventing people from doing what they have a right to do. But thank you for sharing your views. I appreciate it.
I didn't prevent anybody, Calvin. I felt I had to convert the barbaric propaganda.
Thank you, Shakeel. Now I'm going to bring in my duelist, Emma Webb. I'd love to get your take on what you've just heard, if you could hear any of that.
What a conflation of issues. I mean, people are quite capable of going to see a film and making up their own mind. I watched The Crown. I know that a lot of it isn't true. You could say it's stirring up Republican sentiments if you want to. It's just nonsense. And the argument there that he was trying to make against GB News, and I know you and I have a different stance on Shamima Begum, it's just a conflation of issues. It is whataboutery. It's very clear. This is a group of people who think they are entitled to make decisions on behalf behalf of other people about what they can and cannot watch, what they can and cannot see, and what they can and cannot consume. It is imposing the will of a particular group of people on the rest of us. It's completely inappropriate in a free society. And like I said, this is part and parcel of a phenomenon we have been seeing for decades of people who think that they can impose their own religious blasphemy laws on the rest of us, and we should just not be having any of it.
And this is why Emma Webb is my son. Aaron Bastani.
Yeah, I don't think he gave a good account of himself. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the argument that, broadly speaking, the film is based upon a Hindutva conspiracy theory. The people running India right now, the BJP, are extremists. I agree with all of that. But the point is, and it was the key question he couldn't answer, is does that mean that people in this country should not be permitted to see the film? I don't agree with that. I mean, you guys don't agree with that. And I think perhaps even the guest doesn't agree with that because he couldn't give a compelling counter-argument.
Yeah, so sad. But thank you both, Emma Webb and Aaron Bastani, both of my sidekicks this week.